I want to talk about what it's like to switch from Shimano STI road shifters to SRAM DoubleTap. And the reason I'm making this video is because I made the switch a few months ago, and when I was really considering it, I looked on YouTube to try to find a video specific to this subject and didn't really find a whole lot. So I want to help some of you out there who are thinking about making this switch. Now, to give you a little bit of history, my first road bike with Shimano STI I purchased back in around 1994. I have been riding Shimano STI for a very long time on road, cyclocross, and gravel bikes. And I remember when SRAM first came out with DoubleTap, and I saw that you use the same lever to switch from an easier gear or to a harder gear. And my first reaction was absolutely not. That is ridiculous. I am so used to having two buttons to do two different things, and there's no way that I would want to try to switch to a system that uses the same lever for both downshifting and upshifting. However, recently I've noticed that SRAM has really had some innovative products specifically for gravel and cyclocross. Their one-buy systems are really starting to take over the market, and when it came time to buy a new bike, most of the cyclocross bikes that I saw only had SRAM. There was very little Shimano options out there. So seeing that kind of shift in the market, I decided that I would go ahead and take the plunge and get a bike with SRAM DoubleTap, which I have SRAM Force 1 on my cyclocross bike. And I can honestly say the switch has been a whole lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And after riding it for a few months and riding it in a few cyclocross races, it's totally intuitive to me now. One of the main reasons why SRAM was not a difficult switch and why it's so intuitive is the way the lever works. With Shimano STI, you threw the entire lever over to go to a bigger cog or easier gear. Because of that, the distance that you had to throw the lever, switching to the SRAM is pretty intuitive because you have to throw that internal lever over further to go to a bigger cog or an easier gear in the back. Now in the front, it's different. To go to a bigger cog, harder gear, you throw the lever over further. But because of the lever throw being similar to the same distance that you would throw a Shimano lever, it was a lot easier to switch than I thought it would. And going to a smaller cog in the back or harder gear is pretty similar to Shimano. The only difference is the SRAM is a tiny bit more effort. It's also more precise, and you get a more positive click when you switch to that smaller cog. So with the Shimano, it's a little bit more subtle. Now I will say that with Shimano, the effort to go to a bigger cog in the back, in other words, switching that derailleur over, so you're stretching the cable, throwing it to an easier gear, it takes less effort with Shimano. And that's one thing that I noticed in a cyclocross race when I was riding SRAM. I did 2 cyclocross races back to back a few weekends ago, and my finger actually started to get tired because of the amount that you shift in a cyclocross race. So it does take a little bit more effort with SRAM to shift the gears, especially when you're stretching the cable or going to a bigger cog in the back. Now, similar to Shimano, you can shift 3 gears at a time when you're going to a bigger cog, easier gear. So you can just throw that internal lever over and go up 3 gears. And that's something that's extremely useful in a cyclocross race. Sometimes in a cyclocross race, you'll come around a fast corner and immediately have to climb a hill, and you can so quickly, again, just like Shimano, throw that lever over as far as you can and you'll jump up 3 gears. And like I said, with SRAM, it's just like Shimano going to that harder gear, smaller cog in the back. It's 1 gear at a time, but you can just tap that lever quickly if you wanted to move several gears at one time. Another thing that I really like about SRAM because you only use the internal button to shift, it's a lot easier to shift from the drops. Now that's not something I do very often. Usually when I'm riding gravel or riding in a cyclocross race, I keep my hands on the hoods. But on those times where I do have my fingers on the drops, it's a lot easier to shift. And if you're riding road bikes and riding crits, you probably are in the drops a lot. And so shifting is just a little bit easier with SRAM than Shimano. Now, do I have any missed shifts with SRAM? Every once in a while. The most common scenario is when I'm trying to go to an easier cog in the back, bigger cog, and I don't put my finger on the lever all the way and it just kind of slips off. So before I can throw it all the way over, it slips off and jumps to a harder gear when I meant for it to go to an easier gear. Now that scenario doesn't happen very often. I've had one missed shift in my last cyclocross race and one in the race before out of the entire race. So, and when that happens, you know it immediately, and then you just throw the lever over, and so you recover in about a second. So it's not a big deal. Not near as many missed shifts as I thought I would have. In fact, I probably had more missed shifts with Di2. Now with Di2, you're thinking a button, and sometimes you hit the wrong button. And so you can have a missed shift. Again, it didn't happen very often with Di2, but it was probably just a tad more frequent with Di2 than with SRAM. So my point is, the missed shifts after riding it for a couple of months are pretty much a non-issue. Something else that I was a little apprehensive about also with SRAM is the braking. I absolutely love Shimano brakes, both on mountain bikes and on their road systems or cyclocross gravel systems. I like the fact that Shimano uses mineral oil, so you don't have to worry about it corroding your paint if you accidentally get it on your paint. Also, when SRAM first came out with their hydraulic road brakes, there was a recall, massive recall. Now I will say that I've had a little bit more of an issue with SRAM with the braking system dragging. So the pads seem to be a little bit closer to the rotors. I'm not ready to give a full opinion on that because I really haven't ridden in a lot of mud at this point. But some of the wet stuff that I've ridden on gravel, I've noticed that I've gotten some more noise from the pads contacting the rotors. But again, I'm not going to go much into a review, but I just wanted to mention that. So my main point in making this video is if you're thinking about making the switch from Shimano to SRAM road shifters and you're apprehensive, don't worry about it. It's going to be more intuitive than you think it is. Using that one lever is something that you really get used to. So what about you? Have you made the switch? How easy was it for you? Go ahead and drop that in the comments below. And if you have any more questions that I didn't cover in this video, drop those below as well. Thanks for watching.